play football. Yippee!
Welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket out.
You're listening to The Review on the OSG Podcasting Network.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Review. It's the OSG Sports College Football Podcast featuring the online sports guys. John, stop waving your phone.
It's the app.
A little bit different format this week. The team is split. This first half of the show will be me, OSG Nelson, and special guest Brian Rives, the voice of the Austin Peay Governors. Brian, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. Obviously, you guys had a little bit of a special occasion yesterday being the unofficial kickoff to the college football season.
Well, first and foremost, thank you guys for having me. Yeah, we finally got to get on the field. The Governors finally got to get on with Central Arkansas. Let's be honest, a lot of folks around this nation never thought the kickoff would come, never thought there'd be college football played. But we got to go down to Montgomery, Alabama. I thought the Governors represented themselves well. Came up short on the short end of the score when you look at a 24-17 outcome. But college football was played. All the other things that went on around it, by the time they put it on the tee and put a right foot behind it, it was just back to the basics of college football.
For you and for the team, as you're around them, did you still get those opening game kind of vibes? Did it still feel like it always does at the beginning of a season?
You know, honestly, it didn't until we got to Montgomery. And that may be just for me. I think for the team, game week started last Sunday, and they went through all those regular protocols. They were actually in class starting on Monday as well, so that got back to a sense of normalcy for the players. But for me, it was kind of a nervous because I'll be honest, I didn't know. There were still a lot of questions. What would happen? And would we get shut down? Who knows what's going to happen? But once we got to Montgomery and we checked into the team hotel and got to sit down with a meeting room with some of the position coaches, and at that point I was like, okay, it's here. It's going to happen. And once that hit me on Friday night, I was ready to go.
So then, Brian, you get to Crampton Bowl, and it is one of the more storied stadia here in the southeastern United States. It's not Clarksville, and it's not Conway. What was it like to have these two schools playing in a neutral venue? How surreal was it?
What made it surreal was just the eerie quietness. I mean, I believe there was 2,000 or 2,500 fans allowed in, but you and I both know a lot of those tickets go to sponsorships and folks in the local level. I think Austin Peay traveled with just under 400. I'm not exactly sure what Central Arkansas had. A lot of purple in the stands. So those fans that were there tried to give energy and tried to give juice, but just at key times where you knew a band would be playing or the cheerleaders and the crowd would be in it and fired up and excited. I can think of the interception in the back corner of the end zone that Page pulled down. It was just eerily quiet. Like neither side kind of reacted at all. And that was the only thing that stood out to me as different. The game was still the game. There was times of brilliance. There was times of sloppiness. But the one thing that stuck out to me was just the quietness around it where you've always got that buzz. You know, it's the same thing as if you watch Major League Baseball. There's usually just a buzz in the air going on behind the play. And last night that just wasn't there for us.
Yeah, it's been kind of funny. We've had similar conversations, and it's like you don't realize how much you need or miss that noise until that noise isn't there.
Exactly. As an athlete and playing, you catch that band or you catch the crowd or you come over after a turnover and you get that automatic reaction that gets you energized and going. And, you know, I heard a player say it in the pregame, you had to make your own juice. And that's exactly what they had to do at key times last night on both sides of the football.
I imagine that juice was pretty hard, heavy, and intense after the very first play of the football game.
C.J. Evans makes a guy miss, and you wanted college football. First play, touchdown, Governors.
How about that? A pure freshman, C.J. Evans, this time last year was worried about who he's going to take to the homecoming dance on his first carry of his college career. goes 75 yards. And again, I love it for that young man. He's been a fantastic find. He's been kind of the darling of the abbreviated fall camp in the running back room for that group. So the coaches and players have fallen in love with him. But if you watch that play again, go back and watch those receivers on the outside. Yes, the offensive line gets a great push, but watch those wideouts. Watch that slot receiver get 20 yards downfield and still hold that block and spring it for CJ to go. It was fantastic. That was the juice I needed as a broadcaster to get me squared in and going as well.
And then obviously late in the game in the fourth quarter, it was back and forth. And to see all of the video clips, everybody with their clipping programs, clipping everything that's going on in that last 120 seconds. I mean, it was fun to see everything evolve in the game in that last 120 seconds.
You know, we get the ball, get our drive going. Jeremiah Oatsfall caps it off with a brilliant run. Almost, it was a read option where he decided, and he'll tell you this now, that he decided he was going to keep it and go all the way because he knew they would set down on the outside and not allow them to get off the edge and get outside the numbers. So he knew he was going. But you got to tip your cap. Lawan Winningham made an incredible catch on that back corner for Central Arkansas to put them ahead, and then the two-point conversion play. Braylon Smith at the quarterback position for Central Arkansas is a real deal pocket guy. There was some times last night where I thought he could have tucked it and run and been a little more damaging to this Governor defense. I'm glad he didn't. But as that comes for him and that comfortableness comes for him, he'll be even better at the quarterback position. But as you said, those first 3 minutes and those last 3 to 4 minutes of a football game, if you're a college football fan, no matter the level, FBS, FCS, NAIA, a good Saturday morning 7-on-7, that was as good a football as you could watch in those time blocks.
Whose dog was that?
Not mine.
My apologies.
No. That's, you got a studio audience, Brian. That's all good.
I always say I'm preaching to the peanut gallery, so my peanut gallery is a little 13-pounder, so she wants to get in here as well. We're making her a cameo here in a minute.
There you go.
My dog's laying on my feet underneath the desk.
I see.
Just being quiet. It's got to be cool knowing that with everything that's gone on in the world over the last 6 or 7 months and how important college football is to the whole world, knowing that you guys got to be a part of the very first game of what's can only be, I guess, for most people qualified as one of the strangest sports years in, well, pretty much any memory.
It's just normal. This is what would be normal for myself as a broadcaster, for these coaches, for these players, to get them back in the classroom, to get them back in the meeting room, back on the field and have a level of competition. That sense of normalcy is something that quite a lot of us in this nation haven't had since, if we go back to March and April. And so that, for those 70 young men in red and black, for those 70 young men in purple and silver on the other side, that just normal action of what should be going on in their life, just you could tell it just changed them. And like I said, when I got to the hotel and felt that and saw that in them, that energized me as well. So to get this and to let everyone that got a chance to watch it last night or listen to it last night, to give them those 3 or 4 hours of just forgetting about everything else, and I'm watching college football. Now, again, not a lot of the nation may know about the FCS level and some of the powerhouses when you talk about it, but they got to watch a quality football game. Again, it had everything. It had brilliance, it had slop, it had big plays, it had big hits. If you're a football fan, you got exactly what you'd been missing last night.
All right, Phil, we're officially at halftime here with Brian. I know that you've got a lot of things that's on the rapid fire plate now that we've got Brian locked in here. What's on your plate for the rest of the first half here?
Thanks for sticking around, Brian. We've got a few things that we wanted to hit on here in the show since this is part of our regular OSG Sports College Football podcast. We've hit a lot of topics this summer in particular. And this is something that affected Austin Peay, and it's affecting a lot of other programs as well, and that's testing for college football players. How did it impact you guys going into this game?
Well, once the players reported back to campus in July, they've been tested weekly. And with the NCAA protocols of getting into a game week, everyone was tested on Wednesday. And to get on the bus on Friday morning to make the trip to the bowl, you had to have a clear test. Unfortunately, there were a few players that didn't. And our athletic director, Gerald Harrison, put out that statement as well Saturday, letting folks know that. So we missed some key players, but that's no excuse. The guys that dressed and went it gave their 100%. My only concern, and this is just me as not associated with Austin Peay, this is just me as a football fan, is I understand the mandates that have to be put out by the NCAA, but you've also got to support these schools with the financial backing to fit those mandates. And that's where the problem comes, especially at the FCS level. We operate in the red. We are not a financially plus institution by any means on the athletic level. No one except for, and you guys will agree with this, probably a dozen schools in this country operate that way. So everyone operates at a deficiency. We're meeting the numbers. We're meeting the mandates. Unfortunately, it's costing us, and not being able to play that full fall schedule and not being able to play those guaranteed contests puts us behind the financial 8 ball.
So what's next on the plate for Austin Peay going forward after this first game that was on national television? Yes, you get the exposure and all of that, but what's next on the plate?
We have a 3-game fall slate schedule, so we're off this week. On September the 12th, we travel to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to play the Pitt Panthers for their opener, as long as the ACC doesn't pull the plug on that side. And then the next week, the 19th, we head to Cincinnati, Ohio to take on the Bearcats. So we have a 3-game fall schedule. The Ohio Valley Conference decided to slide the conference schedule to spring. But we were allowed to play up to 4 games. But those 4 games had to be played in a 5-week window. With us playing on quote-unquote week 0 of the collegiate football game and everyone else kind of pushing those schedules back, it was hard to find dates. So we ended up with a 3-game fall schedule to include the Panthers and the Bearcats in 2 weeks. So that'll be our fall. And then we'll rest them up and hope that the changes and the acclamations are made to play some spring football and defend our Ohio Valley Conference championship.
And John, Brian brought up something that we've talked about quite a bit here on the show over the last several weeks, and that's the disparity of the programs who are able to afford to do the testing, the ones that are struggling just to make ends meet and do it.
Yeah.
And the bigger conferences such as the ACCs and the SECs and the Big 12s that are still playing, they've all boosted themselves already up to three times a week testing, which makes for a whole different set of circumstances here. Do we think that that's something that's going to keep guys on the field for them as we kind of approach their deadlines? I know the ACC starts, I want to say, in like 2 weeks. The SEC starts kind of at the end of September.
I think the answer is a hopeful yes, but I also think that it comes down to, and this is a point that we've made on the show, Brian, a lot, is the personal responsibility of the student athlete and making sure that you understand that, yes, you're supposed to, you're there to take care of yourself, but at the same time, being in this team environment, you have to be there for your teammates. And if that means telling your position coach ahead of time, I don't feel well, by not being present, you can actually help your team in these situations. It's an odd dichotomy that we're dealing with this year.
And I agree with that. And what becomes the unknown factor, quite honestly, is class. Austin Peay State University is an on-campus class. We have virtual options, but I believe, if I read the numbers right, 70% of the students are on campus taking in-person classes. So you're putting student athletes in those classes where, yes, the student athlete has had it drilled into his or her head about masking up, sanitation, social distancing, and being smart about it. But that doesn't mean the person sitting across from them in geography class is taking those same precautions and going through those same protocols. There was discussion, obviously, at all levels about bubbling classes or making athletes virtual, but that's not the experience you go to college for. You know, I was lucky enough to meet my wife in a college class. I made some of the best friends in my life in classes, in person. Sitting in front of a computer screen takes away some of those experiences. So you don't want to make this, again, that normalcy we talked about playing football, that normalcy of being a college student as well has to be there, and you just hope that everyone is living up to their end of the bargain. As you said, sometimes you can do a bigger benefit to everyone by staying home and staying away for a day to make sure something is not more than it really is and benefiting the group as a whole.
We've reached the halfway point here.
It's the 2-minute warning with Brian now. It's the 2-minute warning with Brian. What's on that Christmas list, Phil?
I was just going to go through the quick promo stuff here. In case you're wondering, you can chime in. Let us know what you think, what you like, what you don't like, stuff that you want us to talk about here on the review. You can hit us up on social media. Really, really easy to find at OSG Sports, both on Facebook and Twitter. If you're watching this on YouTube, then you've already found us. And make sure you subscribe. Let us know what you think about the show. We're trying to keep it visual along with audio. This started out as just a straight up podcast, but we added the video element to it. And as we move into the second quarter here, guys, one of the biggest topics in college football, aside from things kicking off this week, is the adventures or the misadventures, or however you want to characterize it, of the Big 12. We're now talking about everything from playing in the spring to kicking off after Thanksgiving or kicking off at the beginning of January in dome stadiums.
Oh, the 10.
What are they doing?
Yeah, Brian, I've just been trying to come up with verbs, and I run out of adjectives at this point. I don't know what to think about the 10 now. I really don't.
But my favorite part of the Big Ten is the hypocrisy of a commissioner who does not want his teams to play, but yet will tell you he'll go attend his son's football games while he's playing in the SEC.
Boom.
That's the definition of hypocrisy in my world. Again, I understand when you have your own Big Ten president saying or asking, questioning, was there even a vote? I'm not sure that was done the right way. So I don't have a good adjective for you as well, other than hypocrisy.
Is it even practical for them to try starting to play at the beginning of December or the beginning of
This is like our bad. Can we get a do-over? This is a do-over like we had when we were like 12 and 13 years old in the neighborhood with all the kids playing pickup, Brian. This is like do-over. This is what this is turning into.
Do you think the financial statements hit and they realize the lack of income, we're not going to be able to keep the lights on? And now you've changed? You're right. You start Thanksgiving, literally you're going to play 3 weeks, then you're going to be giving them Christmas break. You're going to come back after the first year. And at that point, the NFL will be in their playoff season. So you're not going to have the stage and the guarantee that you're used to. If we're going to play a spring season, let's focus on making the plans to play a spring season. That's my only concern. There's all this talk of we'll play football in the spring. Well, that started about a month and a half ago. Don't you think by now you would have a start date, an idea of a number of games scheduled? Wouldn't you have put in the work to make sure and ensure those things happen?
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys this. Could it possibly have been born out of the statement by the College Football Playoff Committee that, we're having a college football championship?
Hang on for a second.
But how can you be included? If you don't start playing football until Thanksgiving, you're going to play 4 games. Yeah. Does 4 games qualify you for a playoff when you're looking at the ACC and the SEC and all those others that have an 8-game schedule? How can you send a representative who's only played 4 into a playoff?
Oh.
Look, right now, hey, let's try honest. Right now, Central Arkansas is qualified. Put them in.
I'm all for it. I want a bowl season with the both of you. That's what I want.
Have ball, will travel. Let's go.
Brian, we know you have to go. Thanks for coming on with us. Time for the blatant promo of everything going on with you and Austin Peay and ESPN Clarksville.
Let'sGoP.com, the greatest chant in college athletics. So make sure you check out the official website of Austin Peay Athletics, Let'sGoP.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Brian Rives, Rives. Would love to have you. And guys, I appreciate the invite. We'll talk football anytime that you want to. Wish you guys the best and continue. I hate the visual podcast part of it for you. That'll cut some viewers off this week with me here. But always enjoy talking sports and always enjoy the invite. So thanks so much.
Be safe, my friend.
Brian Rives, thanks again for joining us. Have a great week. We look forward to seeing the adventures of Austin Peay over the course of the next 6 months or so, I guess.
Well, let me hear it from both of you. Let me hear it from both of you as we get off. Let's go Peay.
Flies open, bro. Let's go Peay.
Woo, John.
Oh, goodness.
We promised before we got through this show, we promised Brother J-Dub and Brother Wilkie that we would do some sort of a conference preview thing talking about football that's coming ahead. Did we not?
We did.
So I guess might as well start with the big dogs.
Right.
We can start talking SEC football, a little bit of a preview. As everybody knows by now, if you're following college football and the games that are going on, the SEC is playing a conference-only schedule. That means everybody plays everybody else, adds a couple games, 10 games for the season. Is it anything outside of what we expect in terms of who the favorites are going to be at this point in time?
I think this season is house money. I think it's chalk. I really do. I think that what really is going to be interesting is how the SEC came up with all of their matchups and all of that, and how it impacts things with scheduling. And but I still think that by the end of it all, you're still going to see the same faces. Obviously, it might be jumbled up a little bit, but I still think it's going to be Alabama on one side, Georgia on the other. Auburn probably, LSU and Auburn 1, 2, and 3 in the West.
Florida and Tennessee,
Florida and Georgia, and so for me, this one it's a chalk season, because when you think about, and this is what we got into with Brian, the resources that are available for the day-to-day operation when it comes to testing and procedures and making sure that everyone is as healthy as you can be. It's haves and have-nots, even in Power 5 conferences. So that's how, for me, I'm perceiving this in my head, that it's going into a football season, and under normal circumstances, it's haves and have-nots. It's the class, and then it's the middle of the road. It's the mid-carders, and then it's the jobbers, to carry our favorite wrestling analogies. I don't see it being any different, but you have to apply the economics of it all into what we're looking at here. Who can spend the money to make sure that testing is okay? Who can spend the money to make sure that your student athletes are okay and are being watched and taken care of on a day-to-day basis? And so for me, I think you still, across all of Power 5, you're looking at the 3 tiers of the belt holders, the mid-carders, and the jobbers. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, something like that, in the situation that we're currently in, it could potentially come down to a battle of attrition. And at the end of the day, you've got your Georgias and your Alabamas with layer after layer of 5-star and 4-star recruits. Both Georgia and Alabama loaded at quarterback. Alabama returns Mac Jones. I almost crossed him and Bryce Young when I was going through the two names.
At least say Bryce Harper.
Yes, don't do that to me. Jones, with plenty of experience, coming back after playing the last few games of the 2019 season and playing rather well in relief of Tua Tagovailoa.
Yep.
And it's been widely speculated that he may not even win the job as the starting quarterback going into 2020. So you've got depth there. And then when you cross the street to the east, the prohibitive favorite there, the Georgia Bulldogs, same situation. They've got Jamie Newman, who played last year at Wake Forest. And they've got JT Daniels, who transferred in from USC, and JT's got experience as well. Both teams set up to go if need be. If one of the two quarterbacks ends up with a problem, you've got another experienced quarterback already there on the roster.
And that's what you need, and especially in this kind of a situation. I think that when you just look at it from a strict playing perspective, because of what may happen with 18 to 22-year-olds, you're going to need that depth on your roster. And if someone is sick or someone is in quarantine as they're trying to figure out if a test is actually a positive or if it's a false positive, with that waiting game that these universities have, you're going to need that depth. And I mean, this is strictly looking at it from a personnel level. This is not looking at it from a talent level, but you're going to need that extra personnel on hand. You're going to need to know that your second stringers and your third stringers are going to be part and parcel to this entire conversation, because you never know when you may need them. More than injuries, which is what we're used to seeing in college football seasons, now you have the added dynamic of COVID-19 involved. And so you never know when you're going to need that second stringer, that third stringer, that backup quarterback that's also a 4 or 5-star coming in, that big transfer that's come in. So I think that it's all a part of this, but you add COVID-19 to it all, and I think that your depth will be key in all of this.
Absolutely. You still have some of the traditional games. You still got your Georgia-Florida game first weekend in November. You still got the Iron Bowl at the end of November. Seeing Georgia-Auburn being played in week number 2 is interesting to me.
Yeah.
And the game that really kind of jumps off the page because, as we all know, you've got to have that game of the week, of the month, of the century, the game of the decade, of the millennium for each season. And this year it looks an awful lot like it's going to be Georgia versus Alabama come October 17th.
Yeah. And, once again, that's going to set
probably for all the marbles.
Yeah. But once again, remember that just because it's all for all the marbles right then and there, you still have the SEC championship game that's going to be played in late December. So just because you have the game of the millennium, of the century, of the week in mid-October doesn't mean that those two teams won't square off again, and you could have the inverse happen for the championship game in December. So no, it's this is a season where math is going to be involved, and you have to take your appreciation and love for rivalries and put it to the side because it won't be traditional dates, and it could mean either more, or it could just be something that would be part of your roadblock to getting to a championship game, especially if we're talking all separate divisions like an Alabama-Georgia thing. Just because you play in October doesn't mean that you won't play back again in December and have it mean more then.
John, what do you say we wrap things up here in the second quarter of the show? We made it to halftime, guys. We're going to toss it to break here in a second. And when we come back in the second half of the show, you're going to be much surprised, but you're getting 2 J-Dubs.
Stereo J-Dubs.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency, or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
But to be the man, you gotta beat the man, and I'm saying, woo!
Hey everybody, welcome back. You're in the second half, the third quarter, however you want, the B block of the college OSG Online Sports Guys College Football Podcast. We are half of the Online Sports Guys. For John Wilkerson 16, you got me, OSG J-Dub. We are the Stereo J-Dubs. The main thing that I want to talk about with you though is they kind of touched on the woes that are the Big Ten. Yeah. What is going on there, man?
I love if you pay attention to Twitter, and J-Dub and I do every now and then, floating around was the notion of playing Big Ten games beginning on Thanksgiving. Why? If you decided not to play in the fall, then what are you going to do Thanksgiving? I mean, and everything has been floated around, J-Dub. The fact that they want to do the indoor season in January, and Miller Park got thrown in there. But football in Miller Park should be interesting, and then finishing out the season, and then all these wild scenarios. It's becoming a comedy show.
And also, aren't some parents from Nebraska jumping in to trying to recoup the season? What is Kevin thinking? How is he not thinking? What in the world is happening in the minds of Big Ten leadership? How is this even an idea?
Well, is Kevin Warren just surrounded by yes men who just kind of shield him away from what the Barry Alvarez's wants to do, and all the old school guys that actually are in touch with their campuses and with their fan bases and see what idiocy this is? And I'll tell you, J-Dub, I went several steps lower and actually looked at the message boards.
Oh, that's your first mistake. Never read the comments.
Yeah, well, I got some interesting takes, especially from Michigan, and just how upset and pissed off. But if you read between the lines, and JW, you and I are the type that read between the lines because that's who we are.
Where we live.
It's almost as if the deep-pocketed boosters are university donors. I'm wondering if they're holding back some large checks, not only for the athletic department, for the university in general, because you're reading these messages about so-and-so taking the check away or whatever because of the factions you have there at Michigan. You've got the athletic director and head coach Jim Harbaugh aligned at wanting to play in the fall. And you've got the president of the university who's aligned with Governor Gretchen Whitmer and who don't want fall at all, really don't want to have this season to be played. And I think what we're seeing is, how is the money talking? And I think the money is on the side of the athletic department in that regard. That's just reading between the lines.
Well, you've got to think about it. You know, we've been in and around college athletics for decades, and we know where the money comes from. We're not, naive. And we know that boosters have a lot of say when it comes to scheduling, when it comes to, what name is on what university building. I mean, we know the money, the endowments are there. Yeah. But I can't help but agree with you that some of these guys are saying, well, you remember that new video board we were going to pay for you? You're not going to get it this year. Or, remember how we were going to do this thing I mean, reading between the lines is actually a pretty not far-fetched move here, that some of these big university boosters and some of these big university donors are not happy with where the Big Ten is right now.
Well, what I'm picking up on, it goes further than the video board or endowed scholarships. It's going to maybe a wing of the library, maybe the business school getting whatever new toys they need. It goes to the academic part. And we're talking about withholding and well, not boosters, but those who endow money at the University of Michigan. Yeah. We're talking about captains of industry. We're talking about CEOs of large corporations that have seats on the New York Stock Exchange. I get the feeling they're starting to withhold their funds because they're upset that they can't sit in their luxury box at Michigan Stadium or wherever they sit and watch the Wolverines play and entertain clients. And I totally get it. And it's something that really nobody has really explored. But when you get intelligent guys like you and me, J-Dub, who tend to read between the lines and read the BS, we see it. And that is a definite byproduct of the Big Ten stupidity.
And something else came out today, which I thought was interesting. SI.com posted an open letter to Kevin Warren on Wolverine Digest. Take two guesses where that came from. Yep. But talking about how the data says let them play. And it literally lists all of these reasons how you're an idiot for canceling the season as early as you did. And I really do feel like, I mean, at what point, Wilkie, or should I call you other half of the stereo J-Dubs, at what point can or should some of these schools break away from the conference and do their own thing? I mean, what would be the fallout if a Michigan did their own thing? I know they'd be breaking conference rules and regulations and all the stipulations of their contract, but at what point in time are they able to take things into their own hands, or are they basically stuck behind Kevin Warren's 8 ball?
Well, you're talking about tradition that goes back to the 19th century as well, with Michigan, Ohio State, Indiana, and those type of schools. I don't think we're there yet. I think it's too much of a scary proposition. But if you get some of the captains in industries that are alums and deep-pocketed boosters and benefactors, these universities, it might be a possibility to explore. I mean, we're 2020 is the unprecedented year, right? And I'm tired of using the word unprecedented because that's all we hear about this year. But it is unprecedented what we're seeing with the Big Ten Conference, and a major conference like that, just doing what they are doing willy-nilly and not listening to the powers that be. I mean, there are some really seasoned college administrators at these Big Ten universities that are just being ignored. And when do they decide that there's other possibilities out there? Is this the new trigger to realignment? I mean, or do they form their own new conference? I mean, it's crazy. But this is a crazy year, and I just think it's going to get worse before it gets better on this. I just think there's no leadership, no nothing going on in the Big Ten Conference. They're just kind of a rudderless ship. I never thought I'd say that about the Big Ten either.
And we won't even talk about how Kevin Warren's son is playing fall football, but we won't go there.
Talk about blown credibility.
Exactly.
What a good segue.
But I do believe that this is going to get ugly before it gets better. But let's talk about something we can control. Like, speaking of my segue here, Phil and Nelson kind of gave their little, preview of the SEC. SEC slate games start September 26th, I do believe, is when the SEC first games are starting to come around to play. So what is your take on the SEC, where it stands right now, as far as, who's to watch, what's happening, where are we at with testing? What is your take on the SEC right now?
Well, I'm going to go strictly with games and, the COVID thing, so be it. I think they covered it. I think they covered that pretty well. All right, let's start with the East. Obviously, to me, Georgia and Florida, as it has always been the last 10, 15 years, it seems like, are going to be at the top right now, kind of fighting it out. But if I saw a team that is moving forward, going to challenge soon, that'll be your Tennessee Volunteers, J-Dub, because I think they're one recruiting class away from joining that duo. And I think it would be a boost to the SEC East because it's gotten stale. I mean, Georgia and Florida, they're great programs, but they just don't do anything to excite you. When you get that Tennessee fan base riled up, which I think is one of the best fan bases in college football, I just think that brings the East, the SEC East, just brings it even higher and puts it on par with the SEC West. I know some SEC fans are going to go nuts with what I'm saying here, but I'm an SEC guy, so what? Deal with it.
I do think Tennessee. I have Tennessee coming in 5th right now in the East. Actually, if you want to consider be technical, tied for 3rd with Kentucky and South Carolina. I think Jarrett Guarantano has had its ups and downs, but I think he's finally starting to buy into Jeremy Pruitt's system. I think Harrison Bailey, who we know very well, and then from the Georgia area, is going to challenge him immediately for that starting quarterback job. I really do. I think Tennessee's defense is going to be iffy. I think that's where it's going to get into play. Can they stop a Georgia, a Florida, Kentucky, right, from scoring? Even a Vanderbilt. Can they stop them from scoring? So we have to look at that. But I do have Florida and Georgia tops. I had them either one going in the East. And I don't know what's happening with Mizzou and Vandy. They're just hanging out at the bottom there. Maybe they'll figure it out eventually. I know Mizzou's got some coaching transfers going on there. But Mizzou's first game is Bama at home. So that's not going to bode too well for the Tigers.
Well, Mizzou, yeah. How'd you like to be Eli Drinkwitz making your debut against the Crimson Tide of Alabama? But he is really an offensive mind. He built that offense with Ryan Finley at NC State, and he had talent at App State for his 1 year there, and did really well with the Mountaineers. And now he goes to Missouri for his SEC test. I think Missouri is probably about 3-4 years away, for even if they're going to think about challenging for the SEC East, because it's a new system coming in, and it's a total different, it's night and day compared to what it was with Barry Odom. So it's going to take a couple of recruiting classes for Mizzou to get it done, but I love the move. I think you're right. I think they're going to be toward the bottom this year. South Carolina and Kentucky, I like Kentucky and what they've done, but they just don't have enough talent there. They always seem to fade toward the end of October, and it's always depth issues with Kentucky. They've also had some offensive players kind of out of position, but they've performed really well. But Kentucky, who I like a lot, Mark Stoops, I think he's an outstanding coach, but they're always that 7-5 team that always in the middle of the road of the SEC East. And, you just kind of wonder, are Gamecock fans getting a little, is Will Muschamp's getting a little stale there?
Well, that's kind of my take, because you look at that middle run of the East. You've got Kentucky, South Carolina, and Tennessee, right? Tennessee, Jeremy Pruitt has proved his recruiting prowess this year with so many good, 5, 4, and 3 stars coming into Tennessee. And then you look at Muschamp at South Carolina, and you look at Stoops. They're not recruiting anywhere near at that level. I like Kentucky at times last year, showed really flashes of greatness, and then just faded down the stretch. And South Carolina won some big games and lost some easy games. What is it going to take for Muschamp and Stoops to take that next step and challenge, or even I'll put Pruitt in there as well, to challenge Florida and Georgia? What's it going to take to challenge the Gators and the Bulldogs?
It's hard for Kentucky because it's a basketball school, and you're limited on how much in-state talent you can get. Now, I've thought Coach Stoops has done a good job of going into Ohio and going into some of those border states that have strong high school football programs. Kentucky has to do that. As far as South Carolina, again, they are in the shadow of Clemson.
Yeah.
What does Clemson do? All they do is win national titles or challenge for national titles. South Carolina, what Steve Spurrier did there at South Carolina was phenomenal, but he was a known commodity. And Will Muschamp, he's known commodity as a defensive coordinator, but as a head coach, still leaves a little bit to be desired. But it's hard to recruit to South Carolina. Again, you're limited with in-state talent. You've got 4 other schools in your home state of North Carolina that you got to compete against to get the Charlotte and the Raleigh kids. And so they've got to depend on the Metro Atlanta area. They got to depend on Georgia. They got to depend on Florida to get their athletes. And there's only so many they can get when you're competing with some of the great programs that they are. And, I think, South Carolina is just one of those programs that has a fantastic fan base, but they're just a lot that's not desired there each year.
It's almost like always a bridesmaid, never a bride.
Exactly. But Tennessee, to me, that's the team that's on the rise. That's the program that's on the rise. You brought up Jared Garantano. Look, T. Martin is his offensive coordinator now, and Chris Winkie is known throughout the college ranks, even in the NFL, of doing a good job of developing young quarterbacks. So I think he's going to be set, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ups his game a little bit. I tend to agree with you. Tennessee is a recruiting class away. They're going to be in the middle of the road, but if there is a bowl season, which I doubt there will be, we know there's not going to be, but if there was, and they got a good bowl win, I think that would be a great catapult to 2021.
And I think after the butt chewing he took after that audible he run on the goal line against Alabama, and Alabama ran it back for the touchdown. Jeremy Pruitt, pulled him aside and did that butt chewing. I think at that moment, it took a second for Garantano to find himself, but I think he's really coming to his own in that offense. And I think T. Martin and Chris Winkie are doing nothing but helping him. Kid's got an amazing skill set, and I think he's definitely going to put a showing in this year because his senior year. I think he's going to do well this year.
So the East is decided by the cocktail party.
I do believe that the world's largest cocktail party will decide the East. And I think that's the way it's going to be for the next probably foreseeable future. Hopefully, Tennessee and Kentucky and South Carolina do something to challenge that, because as an East fan, it's been kind of boring, like you said earlier. But let's move over to something that's not boring. I call this the conference of the coach, right? You look at the SEC West. You've got Saban, Orgeron, Malzahn, Jimbo Fisher. Now we've added Mike Leach. We've added Lane Kiffin, and we've got Sam Pittman at Arkansas. What in the world is happening in the West this year? From coaching talent, it's stacked. It's going to come down to their gameplay.
I love the Pirate in Starkville. I think everybody has marked the Ole Miss Mississippi State, the Egg Bowl game on their calendar, because it's like a hockey game. You always know somewhere along the lines they're going to drop the gloves and go at it, right?
Yep.
And especially after the way last year ended, and with Lane Kiffin and Mike Leach on opposing sidelines.
That's amazing.
Thanksgiving weekend on November 28th.
Yep.
It'll be a throwdown.
And hopefully there just won't be any lifted legs this year. So hopefully it'll be a little bit better.
Go ahead.
But I'm just saying, but you have to look at the adding of those coaches. They've always been stacked, and You look at adding in a Mike Leach, who's an amazingly gifted mind. He's a little on the eccentric side, but he's an amazing, just offensive mind. And Lane Kiffin, for as much as I absolutely despise the man for the way he left my university in shambles, he's a decent coach. And I think that he's going to turn around. He's going to turn around Ole Miss and actually do some damage in Hot Toddy Land. But I still think
he can lay low there. That's the good thing about being in Oxford. But you brought up Mike Leach, and think about the places where he's coached and won. First in Lubbock, Texas, at Texas Tech. He had some talent there. And then he goes to Pullman, Washington, your old stomping grounds. I've been to Pullman as well. It is Auburn, Clemson of the Pac-12, and he wins consistently there. Now he goes to Starkville. I mean, he could have picked some better places to live, don't you think? Anyway,
you think, but
picking Lubbock, Texas, Pullman, Washington, and now Starkville, Mississippi.
I mean,
you know what? He wins.
Like I said last week, do they even tailgate in Starkville? But I mean, maybe they'll show up for the Pirate. Maybe Mississippi State will do well bringing him in, a known commodity. I say you know what you're going to get with Mike Leach. You really don't know what you're going to get with Mike Leach, but you're going to get a competitive football team. That's what you're going to get.
You also know that the press conference is going to be just as entertaining as the game.
Absolutely. He earned his Pirate nickname legitimately. I almost think you have to go Bama number one here. Because LSU lost Burrow, they lost Hilaire. You have to think that they're still a strong number two, but Bama's getting their first game at Mizzou. They're going to get started off. I mean, and LSU starts at home against Mississippi State. I mean, I still think just like the East is between Florida and Georgia, I think the West is between Bama and LSU.
Yeah, it's between Bama and LSU. I'm interested to see what the LSU encore is here, or the sequel. They did lose a lot of talent, and Steve Ensminger now as the offensive coordinator, it's his ship now to sail. I think LSU is going to challenge Alabama in the West, as I ramble a little bit, but opening up at home against Mississippi State, that's going to be, to me, a very interesting ball game. And then you go on the road at Florida, you go at Auburn, and you go to Texas A&M. So, well, it's like everything else in the West. It's pretty tough. Alabama, you're right. They get to open up with Mizzou in Columbia. Farouk, or Memorial Stadium, or what they call it now. I think they've have completed the renovations there. So it's going to be. It should have been rocking if it wasn't for COVID. This is the wrong time to have Alabama come to Columbia.
And that's the truth.
But really, you look at Alabama's schedule, and the road games are Ole Miss, Tennessee, LSU, and Arkansas. So you got to really like the Tide in this one.
And
go ahead.
And then I've got the second tier coming in. I've got Auburn coming in. Auburn starts their season against Kentucky. And I've got Texas A&M coming in. They start against Vandy. I think two very winnable games for the Tigers and for the Aggies. Who do you see favoring out in that middle of the pack there?
I tend to like Texas A&M because I think they got just a little better talent than Auburn. And this is really the year Jimbo Fisher needs to, really needs to earn his paycheck, because we all know how much he's getting paid, Texas A&M, and it's all guaranteed. But I think this is the year where he's got to show a little progress as far as going toward a national championship contender, or at least an SEC West championship contender in College Station.
And then I've got the Egg Bowl coming up in 5 and 6. I've got Mississippi State, then Ole Miss. Ole Miss starts the year with Florida at home. So it'd be interesting to see if Lane Kiffin can make a splash immediately. I don't think anybody in the East would mind seeing Ole Miss upset Florida that first game. And then I've got Arkansas and Sam Pittman coming up in 7th. What do you think is going to happen in the lower half of the West?
Yeah, I think you're right. Between Ole Miss and Mississippi State, they're going to be battling out to stay out of the cellar. Of course, SEC didn't do Arkansas much favors, but bringing Florida and Georgia and opening up against Georgia. But, I think there's some nice parts to the Razorbacks. I mean, you got Felipe Franks coming over, Rakeem Boyd comes back. So you got a top caliber running back. And there was still some talent on that offense that Kendall Briles will get the new toys for Kendall Briles to play with and show his innovative offense. And, I think what Sam Pittman did was bring in two really great coordinators, which is really what you got to have in college football right now. And he's going to leave them alone. Kendall Briles is going to run that offense. Sam Pittman is just kind of look at the offensive linemen and kind of manage things. But you got Barry Odom over there, the former Mizzou coach, as your defensive coordinator, and that's where he cut his teeth. And that defense, if they just tackle make some big tackles, maybe 2 or 3 big tackles in a game, that's much better than what they did the last couple of years with Chad Morris. And that's a huge upgrade. But 0-10, I hope not. But looking at that schedule, it's hard to see wins.
And we'll see how Felipe Franks comes back from that injury he suffered last year. So we'll see. Hopefully he
exactly.
That'll be a big teller point there. But yeah, you were listening to the OSG College Football podcast with the Stereo J-Dubs here. If you listen to us on Spreaker, you can watch us on YouTube. Thanks to Phil and Nelson for their first half. But let's go ahead, and we have a big slate of games coming up this week, Wilkie. Let's talk about a few of them. On Thursday night, we've got Central Arkansas, the 1-0 Central Arkansas Bears taking on UAB at UAB. Then we've got South Alabama traveling to the Rock to take on Southern Mississippi. And then on Saturday, we've got SMU. The Mustangs are traveling to Texas State to take on the Bobcats. The Stephen F. Austin Lumberjacks traveling to UTEP to take on the Miners. You've got Houston Baptist Huskies traveling to the Mean Green of North Texas. But we want to focus on a couple of games on Saturday. First, let's talk about Middle Tennessee. The Blue Raiders are traveling to West Point to play Army. What's your take on that game?
What a great opportunity for MTSU to go to West Point to play Army. And a lot of people are high on Army right now because of, they've figured some things out at West Point. And, I kind of like Army in this game, although Middle Tennessee State is pretty good. But I tend to like Army in this game simply because they're at home. And I think they've really got the players to be able to run that triple option that will really confuse Middle Tennessee State.
I agree. I like the Blue Raiders. The Blue Raiders are they do have some talent there at Middle Tennessee State, but I'm agreeing with you. I do believe that Army is going to come out victorious here. You can see that game Saturday at 1:30 p.m. So we both have Army in that one. The next game I want to talk about is hitting a little closer to home for you. The Red Wolves of Arkansas State are traveling to Liberty Bowl Stadium to take on the Memphis Tigers. So what's happening in that game?
Okay, so first time the Red Wolves and the Tigers have played since 2013. What a natural rivalry this is, right across the Mississippi River. About an hour's drive, not even really an hour's drive between the two campuses. And they're playing for it's called the Paint Bucket Bowl, because the winner gets a paint bucket that's painted in their school colors. This is the coaching debut for Ryan Silverfield, who takes over for Mike Norvell. And, Arkansas State's going to be coming in here fired up. They've got one of the top Sun Belt quarterbacks in Logan Bonner, a former Alabama Crimson Tide. He's getting his chance to show off for the Red Wolves. I tend to like the Red Wolves in this game, but it's going to be a tight one, probably by 3 points. It's going to be a late field goal that probably decides it, but I got to go with the Red Wolves.
And you're looking at Memphis. Memphis lost Antonio Gibson to graduation. The weapon was what put Memphis on the map. I do believe that Bonner is going to have the better game for Arkansas State. I believe Memphis has talent, has some weapons, but I honestly think that the the fired upness, like you brought up, of the Red Wolves, I think that's going to push them over the edge. And I do also believe that Arkansas State is going to win this game. I think it's going to be bigger than a field goal. I'm saying probably 10 to 13 points that they're going to win by. But you can see that game Saturday at 8:00 p.m., the Red Wolves and the Tigers.
Yep.
The last game we want to talk about is on Monday Night Football, the only game in town. The BYU Cougars are traveling to Annapolis to take on the Midshipmen of Navy. What do you have going on in that game?
You know, that is a really interesting matchup because how often does BYU get to see the triple option? And now BYU is known to have some really stout defenses, but the triple option aspect kind of makes me queasy. But I kind of like BYU in this game simply because I think they're going to have superior speed, and I really like what they're doing in Provo. Kalani Satake has really kind of settled in there as a head coach, and he's gotten some really good players to buy into their independence. So I'm going with the Cougars.
And that triple option is just nasty to play against. You don't know who's got where and why as a defensive player. BYU is opening up this game as a 2.5-point underdog to Navy here. I'm actually going to disagree with you, Wilkie, and I do believe that Navy is going to come out victorious in this one. I think it's going to be a fight. I think it's going to be one of those good old-fashioned slobber knockers. I don't think it's going to be, a 100-point difference here. But I do think Navy's going to come out of this by a touchdown lead. I don't think that that BYU, their defense, I watched them beat Tennessee last year in overtime, and I just don't think that they've got the legs this year I guess their defense is not, I don't think, ready yet with the lower amount of preparation that we've had with COVID-19, and I think Navy's going to come out of this victorious. But you can see that game Monday night at 8:00 p.m. on the 4-letter. So that's a lot of stuff going on this week, Wilkie. Anything else for the good of our podcast listeners that you want to drop some knowledge for? Anything we haven't talked about?
I don't know about dropping knowledge. I was going to make one more point about BYU. Zach Wilson is one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the country, and I think he's going to be the difference maker for BYU because he can do it all if he has to, and he's got the talent to do it. I tend to agree with you with BYU's defense. However, if it's going to get as physical as you say it is, that's why I like BYU. That is a physical football team when they have to be. But I totally see your points as far as why Navy would be a good pick there. As far as dropping knowledge, week one always makes me nervous as far as making predictions in college football, because you played it and you know how unpredictable it is, how emotions swing. It's even more unpredictable now because you're not going to have the bands, you're not going to have hardly any crowd there. And so in a game where momentum is everything, I'm interested to see because I really don't think the game last Saturday night between Austin Peay and Central Arkansas gave us a feel for what it's going to be like at the top level of college football. So I'm interested to see what the mood swings are like with no crowd, no band, no nothing. Is it going to be very vanilla, or can they generate that type of momentum from the benches?
And I'll kind of agree with you because I watched some high school football in Alabama this week as well, and those games had a little bit more enthusiasm than the Austin Peay Central Arkansas game. So I agree. It didn't really give me, I guess, the shivers. Mm-hmm. Like I think the game of the week this week for me ultimately is going to be Arkansas State Memphis. I think the Paint Bucket Bowl. I think that game's just going to have that feel to it. I think BYU Navy also has that ability to be that game of the week. But yeah, I agree. This first one. I mean, that's why we get paid the small bucks because how many of our predictions actually come true. So
exactly.
We're just going with gut instinct here. When the players, we have to see how they adjust to this age of COVID. So we'll see how that goes. We have a phone app. So you can't see it. There it is, the phone app. Go find us. You can download it from the Google Play Store, from the Apple Store. You can find us on social media, like Wilkie said earlier. OSG Sports. For myself, OSG J-Dub. For Wilkie, J Wilkerson 16. For Nelson, OSG Nelson. And for Phil, OSG Phil. But for Phil and Nelson, we are the Stereo J-Dubs. So thanks so much for listening to us on the podcast, watching us on YouTube. And thank you also to Brian Rives for Austin Peay for coming in and spending some time with us today. We do
Friend
appreciate
of OSG.
Absolutely. So if you have something you want to reach out to us, a story idea, just want to say hello, you want to tell us how bad our picks were, please reach out to us on social media. We do respond to you. And if we use your comment on the podcast, you will be getting some free swag. So I'll make sure I get Phil on that to you. So on behalf of Nelson, Phil, Jay Wilkerson 16, and myself, J-Dub, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Peace out, guys.